good thing about resume, there's standards of practices that applies to multiple industries. So I hope you find this beneficial. Um, about me and why I'm qualified to present on this topic. So I'm a certified career and interview strategist with Career Professionals of Canada. I was also a former recruiter. I went to school for HR, and I have my own business as well, doing this as well. So I not only do it at the school, but I'm self-employed, and I offer the same career services with resume writing, job search strategy, networking, and LinkedIn. Here's the agenda for today. So we're going to be going over types of resumes, the summary statement, which is so important on the resume to start off strong. We're going to look at the education section and other sections as well, and how you can strategically order sections on your resume. So for example, if you don't have any relevant experience in your field, it might be a good idea to put education first, because that's the first thing that recruiters are going to see. So we want to front load your qualifications there, putting them at the top. We're also going to be talking about what an ATS is, and how you can optimize your resume for that applicant tracking system. Also, we're going to go over some general tips as well. It might go a bit beyond resume writing. Again, if you have any questions, we're going to save those for the end. So what's the purpose of a resume? So a resume is not a biography. We don't want to list everything that we've done in our resume. It's very strategic. It needs to be tailored to the position. So it's a marketing tool. Really, it's a brochure. I like to put it that way. The resume is a brochure on why you should hire me, and the interview is like a sales pitch. So you are the product, the company is the buyer, and they're making the decision to buy you or not, to employ you or not. So it needs to be tailored to the needs that they have in the job description. They have needs that they have in that job description, and we want to position ourselves as a solution to their needs. So that's the goal of the resume. So we're going to go over the different formats first. We're just going to touch on these, just so you know, kind of there's no right or wrong way to write a resume. It's every person is unique, so every resume is going to be unique as well. The first one we're going to go through is the chronological resume. This is the most standard. This is probably the one that I use the most as well when I'm writing resumes. So you can see here that it starts off with a summary. It's not very long. It's about 3 sentences long. Sometimes less is more. Concise, precise, crisp writing is essential, because recruiters don't spend a lot of time reading a resume. It's more like 5 to 7 seconds per resume on average. So again, really important to start strong. We don't want anything to sound too generic, and we want to focus on your most marketable skills and qualifications that you bring to the table. So you can see here we're starting with the work experience, where so it's in reverse chronological order, meaning starting with the most recent and working backwards from there. Another thing I like about this resume is it has some quantifiable accomplishments in here. So whenever you can quantify an accomplishment, it's going to increase the credibility and merit of the resume. It just looks a lot more impressive when it's written as an accomplishment versus a job duty. So you can see here, ensure maximum client satisfaction and maintain a satisfaction score of 88% to 99% in less than 6 months. So that number really popped off the page as well. And the recruiter is going to see that number, and they're going to want to know, okay, how did you obtain that? And that's going to pique their interest. The good thing about using a chronological resume is it's easy to follow. And you can see at each job where they picked up different skills, and usually at the bottom, it really depends on your work experience. Like I said, if your education is your strongest asset, you can put that up higher, and you can put your skills up higher as well. That there's no right or wrong way of doing that. Whatever is your strongest asset, that's what you want to start with. Okay, let's look at a functional resume? Okay, so a functional resume, um, how it would be listed are the skills and the experience would be in a different section. So you see deliver financial advice to clients, develop and review optimize investment portfolios. You would just list the job title and company, and then you would have a different section for your skills and your experience. The downfall of that is recruiters can't really see where you demonstrated, where you picked up those skills. But sometimes it is advantageous to have a functional resume. But I'd say for the most part, chronological resume, being a recruiter, I want to know what you did at each job, and a functional resume, like we might take aspects of a functional resume, and maybe list the skills above the experience. If we want to highlight those, we're being strategic with that. But 99% of the time, I'm going to recommend a chronological resume. But I think it's just good to know there's no right or wrong way of doing it, and there's different types of that. And it could possibly be a hybrid, maybe a combination of both. And I'll show you some samples towards the end of the presentation as well. Okay, let's talk about the header. So first things first, we do not want to list our full address in that header. If you have your full address in your header of your resume, make sure you remove that, because there, as you know, there's spams, there's scams out there. So they don't really need to know our full address as well if they're interested in hiring us later down the road, in the hiring process. Then we'll disclose our address. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. Um, Other information you're going to include in that, obviously your name, your city, your province, phone number, and email address. You could also put your LinkedIn URL in your header. And if you have like an online portfolio or any work samples that are in online format, you could link that up in your header as well. For mine, I just have my LinkedIn URL, and I kind of use that as my kind of portfolio, my LinkedIn profile. But that's kind of a whole nother topic, the LinkedIn profile. You could potentially put the job title here as well. So your target job title, you could also place that in the header. Or you could, another thing that I like to do is instead of putting summary here, what I do is like I put the target job title and whatever it is on Indeed or Google. This is a quick way to boost your ATS score by a couple points and just show the recruiter that you customize your resume to that job posting. Sometimes I'll even put in brackets the company name as well. So consider, it really doesn't take a long time to do that as well. Consider changing the summary to your the job title verbatim as it's listed on the job description. Okay, so let's talk about the summary. I think the summary is really one of the most important parts of the resume, and it's usually the biggest area that I see for improvement when I'm doing resume reviews, because like I mentioned earlier, the recruiter only spends 5 to 7 seconds per resume. So we have a very short window to capture their attention. We want to entice them to read the rest of our resume, and the summary is kind of like the hook where you capture their attention. So you want to start with your most marketable assets first, and not use an objective statement as well. Objective statement would be like to obtain a full-time job where I can contribute my skills, experience, and skills, but it doesn't really show what you can do for them. So I think listing like your 3 top skills, making sure those skills are relevant to the job that you're looking for. So for example, medical office administration. What are some skills that are really important for that job? Obviously, we could say computer skills are really important for that job. some sort of like customer service or patient service. What else is really important? Having compassion for the patients, being organized, attention to detail as well. So these are the main, and a lot of the times this is going to show in the job description what they're looking for. So I often say pick 3 or 4 of common skills that are really important to the job, and let's make sure those are listed in your summary. Here are some other questions to consider when you're creating your summary. What makes you unique? So maybe it's a combination of different skill sets that you offer. Maybe you're in MOA right now, but you don't have any relevant experience, but maybe you worked in customer service for 4 years or something like that. So that paired with your education, or maybe you've done a co-op as well, and you've had a little bit of experience. You could add things like that, things that's going to grab their attention, things that they're looking for. I find too, changing perspectives, thinking if you were the recruiter, what would you be looking for? That can really help you get kind of out of your head and shift perspectives, which is really powerful. Also, some questions to consider. What are your strengths? What are you known for? What's your mission statement? So for medical office, it's all about helping people, making a difference, helping people improve their health and improve their lives. So you could put something like that. That's a great way to stand out and show that you're really passionate right off the bat. What can you bring to the table that others can't? How do people benefit by working with you? You could look at performance reviews as well. I think it's really good to keep a copy of these things whenever you get a performance review in the future, or whenever you have an accomplishment that you're really, really proud of. Definitely, like you don't have to put that in your resume right away, but have some sort of a tracker, an accomplishment tracker is what I call it, to put those in so you don't forget it and you don't have to remember that 2 years down the road. Like I can't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. So thinking about accomplishments for a year or 2 ago, that's going to be challenging. You can always ask a friend too. I find sometimes we are our worst critics. So asking a friend what you do well. I remember I used to work in customer service for a propane company a number of years ago, and I remember I was training people, and they said like, "You're very honest. You tell it like it is." And I was like, "Wow, I didn't realize I was honest." And it's really nice to get other people's feedback, and I think you'd be surprised too. Like what you think is a weakness might be a strength as well. And that's another thing too, throughout the job search process, focus on your strengths. So many people talk themselves out of a job, but you got to believe in yourselves. Be passionate about the job. That's a way to stand out. And know you can do this. You guys made it through your programs, so you can make it through a job. You can learn. It's all about it's not just about having the right strategy on paper with a resume or an interview. It's about believing in yourself. It's the mindset as well, which is going to help you get to the next level. Okay, so here is an example of an objective versus a summary here. So you'll see the objective very short, and it doesn't, if I'm the recruiter, it doesn't tell me what you can do for me. It just says that you're seeking employment as a medical lab assistant technician with Life Labs. I mean, at least I've seen worse than this. At least it's customized to the job title and to the company, so that's good. But let's look at the second one. Who would you hire? Second one is quality focused medical lab technician with excellent clinical skills gained through hands-on experience within a hospital environment with Lake Ridge Health. Perform all laboratory tests and procedures with experience, attention to detail, and optimum quality. Here's another one. This one's a lot shorter. Doesn't have to be that long. I think a lot of the times less is more. Empathetic child care educator with excellent communication, organizational, and attention to detail skills. So it shows me what your top strengths are, what you bring to the table right off the bat. Okay, now we're going to talk about the skills section. So including a mix of technical skills or hard skills, such as Microsoft Office, hard skills are skills that you actually learn on the job, whereas soft skills, they're kind of things that just come naturally to you. Or you could say like character skills. Um, I think people are always willing to train too, or sometimes more than others, but um, they're willing to train those hard skills, but the soft skills, those are impossible to teach as well. So I like including a mix of both of them. So yeah, Microsoft Office, communication, anything that you see on the job description there. And I'm just going to go back to those resume samples so I can show you another thing you can do. So relevant skills here, you'll see at the bottom, a list of skills. You can modify that skill list on whatever they're looking for and just change the terminology. That's going to help you boost your ATS score a little bit. And that's going to help you, it's going to show to them that you took the time to customize your resume. And I know it can be very time consuming to tailor every single resume. So just changing up a little bit in the skill section, changing the job title to the summary, and maybe changing a little bit in the summary. But if you're applying to the same type of jobs, usually they're going to be looking for the same type of skills. So you might not even need to change your summary, but you could change your skills. Maybe like they have it worded in the job description, customer excellence or customer experience, and you have it customer service. So you're just changing that one word, customer service, to excellence, or however it's written in the job description. That's going to help boost your ATS score. And I'll tell you more about how an ATS works, which will help that. But main thing is always customize your resume to each and every application. And those are two areas where you can do it in a very short time. Like that'll probably take you 5 minutes. Just add in a couple skills and change the summary to the job title. I think that's it for skills. We're also going to be providing a resume sample as well, so like a template, so you can see where the skill section would go in that. Okay, next, work experience. So we don't want to go too far back in the experience section. I would say 10 to 15 years. Anything beyond that, that's just going a little bit too far back. However, that's just a rule of thumb. If it's relevant experience, if it's within 18 years or something like that, or even 20 years, if it's relevant to what they're looking for example, maybe you took the HR program and you have some sort of like customer service or business background that 17 years ago, I would go ahead and include that because it's relevant. So you'll get a lot of that too, like especially on LinkedIn. People will say like there's a lot of myths out there. People will say, oh, a resume needs to be at least one page. But these are more just like best practices. And like I mentioned earlier, it's unique to you as well. So in the experience section, starting with your job title, the company is usually going to go below that, and then the years of employment. So for years of employment, a lot of people think they got to include the months in there, but you don't have to. You can just go with the years if that works best for you. Say if you've been at a place for 4 years or longer, or even like or 2+ years, you can just put the years instead of the months. That's optional. If you have an employment gap, that could be a way to close the gap a little bit. It's just by putting years, not months. So they see that you were employed for this amount of time for a full year, and then if it was months, it might show like a 6-month gap or something. So on my resume, I have like 10 years. I graduated 10 years ago, so I just go with the dates. So it really depends on your situation. If you're wondering about that, I can feel free to ask. I can deal with that. Okay. The most important part for the experience section is those bullet points. So again, just like with the summary section, we want to start with the strongest and most relevant qualifications first, or accomplishments, I should say. So if you got like employee of the month or improved customer satisfaction score by X%, or reduce cost by X%, or increase revenue, um, increase process efficiency. I would put those like the strongest ones first, because they're gonna see that first, and we really want to. It's all about controlling the narrative when we're doing that. And this trusty old STAR method, it works for interviews. It works for your resume as well. Um, so S stands for situation, A stands for action, and R stands for result. And a lot of people forget about the result as well. They'll talk about what they did, they talk about how they did it, but they leave out the result. And it doesn't always have to be quantified. It can be like I improved customer service, or I dealt with the irate customer. I helped calm her down, and the next week I saw her in the store. Actually, this is more for an interview, but like on a resume, it's going to be trimmed down a lot. But I saw her in the store the very next week. So she turned into a repeat customer. And a lot of people, if they have a negative experience with a company or brand, they might not shop there anymore. So um, if you get stuck, using this format is really helpful for that. So remember, situation, what did you do? What company was it at? Providing a little bit more context on that. What was the action? So what steps did you use? What technologies or tools did you use? Maybe use Microsoft Excel or something like that to organize the training process or something like that. And then what was the result? So in result, it's streamlined processes, increased efficiency. People were trained more effectively. Adding in some sort of result, again, it doesn't always have to be quantified. If it can, that's great. Um, but if not, we can still make it like result or accomplishment based. The main thing we don't want for the experience section is for it to sound like job duties, kind of like what was done to me. No, this is what I did. This is what I accomplished. Here is an example of that and how you can kind of break that down. So I'm just going to read the bottom part. Transformed a paper-based filing system by implemented electronic document management using SharePoint, which significantly improved the efficiency of information management. So you'll notice here there's no metric in here, but it's very much accomplishment based. It says that it improved the efficiency. So there's an example using the STAR method. And once you get into that same framework, breaking it down from situation, action, result, it gets a lot easier once you repeat that. Okay, so brainstorming achievements can be a little bit difficult, especially if it's years ago. Um, so we can look at performance reviews. We can look at letter of recommendations if we have any, promotion letters, from a previous resume, looking back in your notes or your calendar. I find a lot of the times too, like you don't even have to be recognized for it. A lot of the times when I'm working with clients, um, I have to reframe it as, what are you most proud of in your last job? And starting with that. So we're actually gonna brainstorm at least one accomplishment today. Give you some time for that. Okay, so the goal is for everyone to write down one accomplishment. So feel free to do it on a pen and paper. Feel free to write it down on your computer as well. You might have some ideas going through your mind right now. I remember for me, when I worked in customer service, I did training. I created like a flow chart, a training flow chart for processes to follow, like who to contact in any situations. And it was very confusing before. And I kind of clarified and simplified the process there. That was my proudest accomplishment. Maybe you won Employee of the Month. Um, Maybe you increase customer satisfaction score by X%. So here's some more probing questions for you. Maybe you managed a team. Maybe you trained staff. That's another one that I find a lot of people leave out on their resume. That's pretty common that they have. So even put down like how many people you train. That's the way to quantify that. Trained or managed 10 plus employees in the customer service department. Um, that really speaks a lot. If you're doing the training, if you're doing the managing, that means that you're kind of like the role model of the office. Um, so that's a good one, I find. What kind of problems have you solved? Have you increased the client base? Have you surpassed quality standards or sales targets? Have you resolved a difficult situation with the client or customer? So I'll let that sink in a little bit, and I'll go back to this slide so you can kind of break that down. Here's the situation, here's the action, and then here's the result. Feel free to share it in the chat as well. I'd love to hear. Maria, great one there. Made it a habit to apply SWOT analysis in any difficult situation. I actually remember when I was interviewing for a recruiter job, I mentioned so first I think this is a big part of why I'm a career coach and resume writer today. I really struggled finding a job after I graduated, and I finally landed a job as a recruiter. And the mistake I was making before was I wasn't talking about what I learned in school. That was my most marketable asset that I had. I had a degree in HR and I didn't even talk about it. So for employers, that's what they're going to care most about as well. So talking even in the interview or mentioning on your resume, like in the education section, or you can put it even in your summary as well, mentioning what classes you took at Trillium College. Um, so Maria, could you just with the could you just provide me a little bit more context? Made it a habit to apply the SWOT analysis in a difficult situation. What was the situation? You can unmute. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Maria. You can put it in the chat if you'd like to as well. Okay, sorry. Jessica says all mics will be muted until the end. Okay, well, but yeah, if you could just put a little bit more information as to the context of what the difficult situation was. Yeah, some really good accomplishments here. Um, Jennifer, awesome one right there. Trained and hired over 100 employees. That really shows your level of responsibility as well. Managing multiple franchises, managing staff and supervisors. Great accomplishments there. Okay, let's move on. So yeah, once you've done one, you might get more ideas as well. Keep on going. Even while I'm talking, just jot them down if they pop into your mind. What you're doing is you're brainstorming evidence of why you're a good candidate as well. So this not only helps you improve your resume, but provides evidence to yourself that you can do this job. Okay. Other sections on a resume would be volunteer experience. If you're in any professional associations, and I think another really good, this is goes outside resume writing, but I want to touch on it. Um, Researching professional associations in your area is a great way to network, to meet other people in your industry and learn from them directly. Um, I remember there was a medical office administrator, a previous student that I worked with, and she attended, um, it was like a workshop or some sort of event. It was like a meet and greet event at Lake Bridge Health. And she ended up getting a job like 3 or 6 months later down the road because she got the contact information of the managers and followed up with them. Um, she ended up working at a clinic for a bit. That was kind of like a stepping stone job just to get some experience in healthcare. Before that, she worked in the restaurant industry, customer service. She did accounts payable and receptionist as well. So she didn't. That was the kind of the missing pieces, that medical experience, and she got that, and then she leveraged that to get her job. But it all started by getting her foot in the door by researching professional associations. Also looking at different certifications. This is where networking really helps as well, finding role models and seeing what skills they have, and then using that as kind of like a gap analysis, where you mentioned SWOT analysis is another good business uh, analysis is where's my gap? Do I need a certification? Do I need just like a bridge job to get me there? So seeing other people's stories is like looking like I'm a big fan of like biographies and learning more about people's stories and how, especially like really successful people or people who have faced a lot of adversity and how they got out of it. And you can get ideas from that, implement that to your life and to your career as well. And also remove that references available upon request. If you have that on your resume, just remove that. It's not doing anything for you. Remember, the resume is a marketing document. It's not like if they're looking for your references, they'll ask you for it, and usually they do after an interview. So it's not serving you. So just remove that. References available on request. Okay, another thing I wanted to touch on are resumes with gaps. So here are some things we can do to close the gap. We can use years, not months. We can usually too, like during an interview, they might ask you about a gap, and I think it really it's really important to, like, for example, well, if you had a gap while you're in school, like obviously you're gonna have a like, or I guess you could be working, but like, what if you had other responsibilities like your family and things like that? Like, as long as you showed to them that you're using that time to upgrade your career. So maybe it's a course that you took, a certification that you took, going back to school. You can use that to explain employment gaps, or maybe like I think words are very powerful too, and the way you say it as well. So there's a big difference between saying I chose to stay home to raise my kids, but now I'm ready for work, versus I had to stay home. It's like what I chose to do versus what happened to me. Um, so I think to just being upfront with that, I wouldn't mention that on the resume that you have, like, some people do that and they'll put career gap, um, stayed at home to take care of kids. I won't even put that on your resume because it's not adding any value. Um, but you can always explain that in the interview if they ask about that. But yeah, and using like anything that you've been doing to upgrade your career, any learning, any developments, that's a way to close the gap as well. And I think too, like if you are if because there's a lot at Trillium College, there's a lot of um, people who are like, the kids have grown up, they're in school now, they're ready to go for a job. If you just let them know too that like I'm ready to go, uh, daycare situation has been set up, the kids are at school, I'm ready to go. They don't want to hear any hesitation there with that. So that's how I'd word it. Okay, so here's how the education would look on the resume. I get for the dates, this is optional too. You don't have to list your year actually for the education. I think most people do, especially recent grads. So they have an idea when you graduated. You could also mention your GPA. That's optional as well. I don't have my GPA listed on my resume. Um, that's kind of optional. Another thing you could do is you could write down the courses that you took at Trillium College, and you can just go to the Trillium College website. So go to Trillium College, whatever your program is, and it will show all the important classes that you took, and you can just copy and paste those right into your resume, pretty much. I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so we got about how much time do we have here, Jessica? 5, 10 minutes? Okay, let's talk about an ATS. So, what an ATS is an electronic filing system. So, um, it pretty much scans and sorts your resume, and it's based on number of keyword matches or whatever qualifications that they're looking for. So that's why it's really important to use those same keywords in the job description on your resume, because then you'll get a higher ATS score, especially if you're applying to like corporations, larger companies, um, hospitals. They're probably going to have an ATS system. But if you're applying to a smaller company, they're probably doing that work manually and going through the resume. So not every company uses an ATS. Definitely the larger ones are more likely to use one. Don't use headers or footers in that. Again, the resume template that we provide, it won't have the headers. They're all ATS friendly. Avoid text boxes as well. Okay. So how an ATS works, it ranks your resume on a score of 0 to 100 based on keyword matches. Usually the recruiter is going to start at the top of the list and with the highest scores and work their way down from that. But again, not every company has an ATS. Um, uh, um, Personal branding. So this is kind of like, I think in your summary statement, it's really important for you to have your brand, which is a combination of like your strengths, your value proposition, um, that are most relevant to the job that you're looking for. Okay, so some final tips. Target the resume to the job you want. Tailor every single resume to the job. Make sure it sounds like an accomplishment rather than a job duty. You can always use ChatGPT to get some ideas, but I wouldn't just copy and paste whatever ChatGPT spits out into your resume because it's going to sound like a textbook, and recruiters they know what is ChatGPT written, or if it's too wordy or if it sounds like a robot, they'll be able to tell. So one thing I like to do with ChatGPT is I'll say like make this more of a conversational tone or simplify this a little bit using prompts to really find what you're looking for until it's worded and make sure it sounds like you too. You don't want to have like your resume sound different than the interview. That can be a little off-putting for them. We want to use clean formatting, make it very concise, make it easy to read, make it easy for them to see why you're the best fit for the position. Of course, make sure you proofread that as well. We don't want any grammar mistakes, any typos, or any words that are capitalized that aren't supposed to be capitalized. Download Grammarly. It will flag any typos. Also, reading it out loud can be really helpful. I read all my resumes that I do out loud because it gives me a different perspective. And taking a break from the resume, coming back for it, or having someone else take a look at it for me. Um, the next point here, 1 to 2 pages. That's the sweet spot. I think, especially if you're entry level, it should definitely not be over 2 pages. Submitted as PDF, so you can save as PDF. So the format just comes out a lot cleaner versus submitting it by Word. If the job description specifies to submit it as a Word document, then do that. But otherwise, I would recommend using PDF because it comes out a lot cleaner. And it doesn't matter what. Sometimes when you open Microsoft Office document on your phone or on a Mac, it can the formatting can be inconsistent. But if you save it as PDF, it's going to maintain consistency um, all the way across. Don't include a picture. Someone I think had a question about that in the chat. If you're overseas, it's a standard to include a picture in that. I think maybe like South America, but North America, Canada, and US, we do not include a picture. Another thing that could be helpful is writing down your top target companies that you want to work at. I find a lot of us focus on the job title, but not necessarily the target companies. And I think that's really important. And then start networking with people who work at your target companies. Um, it's kind of like the analogy I like to use for that is like it's like a Trojan horse carrying your resume behind the gates. So if someone's already got their foot in the door, they can hold it open for you a lot easier than if you just apply to that. It's a great way to stand out, and it's worked for me a handful of times landing a job through people I know. It's not what you know necessarily; it's who you know. And 50 to 80% of all jobs are filled through networking. So I think that's got to be a big part of your strategy. Obviously, having a good resume is important, but if you're not networking, you're missing out on 50% of the opportunities at least.